Okay. I'm doing my speech on Danvers State Hospital. I have my mom here, my boyfriend, and my sister with her 2 kids. Um, Danvers State Hospital, also known to be an insane asylum, was built on Hawthorne Hill, named after John Hawthorne, the judge during the Salem witch trials in 1874. The designer of the Danvers building was Thomas Kirkbride. He had it designed to specifically help the mentally ill by having a building that divided out into 4 different sections, and the patients would have beautiful views of the outdoors. Danvers opened in 1878 and was able to house 450 patients for mental illness. Quote, "The people of the town called it the Castle on the Hills," end quote, according to a quote by Rebecca Brooks, who has a bachelor's degree in journalism on a website called The History of Massachusetts, written in 2012. Brooks also stated that the building took up approximately 700,000 square feet. Danvers was a place for the mentally ill patients, which eventually introduced the prefrontal lobotomy to America. But once the hospital shut down, it transformed into a beautiful apartment complex. During the years to follow, there was over 40 different buildings built on the land to divide out the patients into the same categories, like tuberculosis patients, staff housing, and 2 elderly buildings. Staff did not use restraints. They believed in helping to cure the illness by doing things like gardening, cooking, and exercising, although a problem started to occur when criminals came and started destroying things. So they built a hospital in Bridgewater, Massachusetts to house the criminally insane. As years went by, in the 1920s, there became too many patients. The hospital had 2,000 patients when the capacity was 450. According to Tom Kirsch, a writer who wrote on the Opacity website, in a quote, he stated, quote, "The lack of funding was the root of many problems that were plaguing state-run mental hospitals all over the United States, including staff shortages, low wages, overcrowding, and substandard care," end quote. Worst of all, the staff numbers were the same, which meant not enough staff for the people, so it caused a lot of concerns. Unfortunately, all their efforts on helping the patients without restraints came to a halt. They started using things like straitjackets, padlock cells, prefrontal lobotomy, and shock therapy to calm the mentally ill. In 1939, over 278 patients died that year, about 2,360 patients total, leaving many to suffer due to the lack of staff and help. Lobotomy was one of the main procedures at the time. They thought it would cure people of their mental illnesses. Hugh Levinson from the BBC News, on an article called "The Strange and Curious History of the Lobotomy" in 2011, he mentioned how the lobotomy is performed. He said, quote, "Surgeons would drill a pair of holes into the skull, either at the top or the side, and push a sharp instrument, alectomy, into the brain," end quote. Howard Dolly was one of the many that experienced the prefrontal lobotomy invented by a guy named Walter Freeman. According to a quote by Howard Dolly, who was a person who was a witness to lobotomy, talked about his procedure on My Lobotomy, Howard Dolly's Journey, on the internet. In 2005, he was 12 years old when his stepmom and dad decided he needed to get a lobotomy. Quote, "I'll never know what I lost in those 10 minutes with Dr. Freeman and his ice pick. By some miracle, it didn't turn me into a zombie, crush my spirit, or kill me, but it did affect me," end quote. Freeman performed over 2,500 operations, but when he ended up causing a brain hemorrhage that resulted in death, his lobotomy career came to a halt. The lobotomy took a person's life, a person's past, and erased it. They knew how to walk and talk, but they became different people. It seemed to have worked, but it destroyed people's lives. Up until 1992, when Danvers State Hospital shut down, the hospital got worse. As Kirkbride's building started to shut down and people were transferred to town facilities, the abandoned hospital stayed empty until 2005, when it was purchased for $12 million by a development group called Avalon Bay, where they left only 2 side buildings and the main building. The rest was gutted completely to remodel for plans of an apartment building. In 2008, construction on the apartment was done and people started moving in. Karen Nelson, the Danvers town director on Danvers State Hospital Reuse, Avalon Danvers, says, quote, Avalon has helped to provide 15% affordable units to the development, both in part to increase the availability for residents with diverse incomes, end quote. Avalon Bay has become the home to many, with many amenities and helping those in the community. An insane asylum transforming into an apartment building seems amazing to me. I have always been into the psychiatric aspect of things, like with people who have personality disorders. I find it quite interesting, and the history behind the treatments that occurred in the early 1900s, to be able to go into history and see for yourself all of the things going on within Danvers Mental Hospital would be fascinating, and to be able to go into the Avalon Bay apartment would be awesome. I don't believe in ghosts, but I do feel like Avalon Bay will forever be haunted by its past. That's the end of my speech. I hope you guys liked it. Okay.